Once a scholar said, don't build links, build a relationship. Yeah, we are targeting to build a relationship. It can be person to person, it can be country to country, it can be the bilateral relations. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our third episode, Natural Civilization at Natural TV. Today we are going to talk on Somalia, the importance of Somalia as a country, the historical and civilization background of Somalia, why Somalia is important for Africa and for the world, in global politics, the role of Somalia, and the Somalians' importance for the Horn of Africa, for Middle East, from so many backgrounds. As you see, today we are hosting three credible and three scholars who are working and researching on Somalia, and welcome to our Natural Civilization program at Natural TV.
Thank you for having us.
As viewers, you see we have three researchers and experts who are working on Somalian Horn of African stuffs, who are working on Somalia-Turkey relations, who are working on Somalia and position in Africa, Somalian political stuffs, socio-political development, socio-economic development, the role of youth in Somalia, Somalia diaspora in the world. Even they're working, they have a very good contribution in abroad, not only in their own country, they have a good contribution in Turkey. I want to ask you, as you see, like we have three persons who are here, we hosted them. Before going to discuss about the country of Somalia, could you please explain, or could you please tell us about, introduce yourself, like what you are actually doing, and what's specialization you are working? Want to ask actually specific three persons. I want to ask Mr. Ibrahim if you want to start just.
Let me start by thanking you first for hosting me today, and I also wanna say hi to my friends here. Of course, my name is Ibrahim Mukhtar. I work as a researcher on regional security, Horn of Africa, and also I'm interested in migration issues. Maybe I can give my friends the floor to also introduce themselves.
Adifata.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nazmul, for having me. My name is Adifata Harit. I'm a researcher in relation to political science and studying about Somalia conflicts and post-conflict state building. So normally I research about the Somalian issues, how Somalia can stabilize and build its national institutions. I am specialized on the good governance, democracy and elections. These are the areas that I focus mostly on my area of studies and area of research.
That's great. I want to ask Mr. Mohammed Salah.
First of all, thanks for having us. And my name is Mohammed Salah, and my research area mainly focuses on state building and political Islam in Somalia and radicalism.
That's great. Again, welcome to our program. As you know, we are really focusing on some specific countries, not actually specific, almost we try to cover the world based on the country. We almost talk on the Arakan as a refugee stuffs in our first episode, and in second episode we talk about China as a rising power. Now we are also going to talk on Somalian stuffs. I mean, Somalia, why Somalia, maybe we can say also it's a rising power and rising star in Africa. Before actually going into the discuss, I want to ask to Mr. Ibrahim, as you see media or in international diaspora from Somalia or what beyond the Somalia, they try to show Somalia as a chaos, crisis country. They have a conflict, drought, the problem. Always they try to mean Somalia is a problem. Do you agree on this, or you want to differ from some stuff, some opinions, like, okay, Somalia is not the country of chaos and conflict, it's more than this, they have a really historical background, they have a real civilization. We want to know actually about Somalia. How do you think, like, how do you see the Somalia as a Somalian?
Thank you so much. Somalia is one of the most misunderstood countries in the world, and this, of course, the biggest part of the blame goes to the international media. most of the Somalia that we know right now has been popularized after the 1991 civil war. But the Somali history goes millenniums back, and it's a old history. It's been is placed in a very geostrategic area, connecting different parts of the world. It has been a place where different civilizations have been meeting, starting with the Chinese civilization, the Persian civilization, the Arab civilization, and the Somali civilization itself. And in particular, after pre-Islamic period and after the post-Islamic period, the Somali civilization has been a very important civilization. We had many city-states in the history of Somalia. We had trade relations and economic interactions and cultural exchanges and with different parts of the world, including the Egyptian civilization. And this is well witnessed across different cities in Somalia, starting from Zayla in the north and Berbera, going to the land of Punt, the current Puntland administration, going down towards Merka, Mogadishu, Barawa. All these are very historical cities, and right now the Somali history, even though the international media tries to portray it as a failed state that is
civil war or something like
that is suffering always from civil war, poverty, and drought. The Somalia is reclaiming its deserved position. Youth are becoming active in politics and in social development. The diaspora is getting back, and if the media becomes objective, then you will see another side of Somalia that, of course, people will be astounded at and shocked to see such a place. For those few remarks, I would like to just promise people and give them assurance that Somalia is rising and is rising with a high speed, and no one is going to stop it. And
I just want to add one more question. Like you said, some city, like it's a very historical place. Could you please tell us like names, like, okay, these places, these cities, those kind of names is really historical for this reason? I mean, why it's a very historical place? Is there any reason?
As I said earlier, Somalia is in itself a blessed place. It's in a very strategic area. The Gulf of Aden on the north, the Indian Ocean on the east, and Zayla, for instance, is believed to be hosting even some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So Somalis as a nation are one of the first nations to accept Islam because of the trade relations between that part of Somalia and the Arab world. If you go to the land of Punt, the history there goes back to the times of Egypt. In fact, some of the Egyptians believe that they originate from the land of Punt. So you're going back to Marka, Mogadishu, and Barawa. These are there's cities in the southern Somalia that border the coast, and a lot has been written, including Ibn Battuta's famous Rihla that has described Mogadishu then as a beautiful city with a very cosmopolitan area with different ethnicities, different races, and wonderful architecture.
Yeah, that's really great information. I think those kind of steps we are always, I mean, like what we see, as you mentioned, like international media try to portray it as Somalia, and what we learn from you is totally different. By the way, I want to ask to Abdul Fattah, like as you said, Mr. Ibrahim, he said like why the history and the civilization engulfed in Somalia and shows the really good scenario of Somalia. By the way, I want to know like why Somalia as a country, as a state, is very important for Africa, for Middle East, even for Europe and Western country, including we can say also the Asia, like from the rising power China or Indian perspective. How do we explain like Somalia's importance?
Oh, okay. Thank you once again for having me. To answer this question, actually, it starts with geography, and geography is something that I am not specialized, but I think Somalia is of immense strategic significance, serving as a gateway to Africa, Middle East and Europe, considering that Somalia is a special place. For example, if you look the north coast of Somalia, which leads to Bab el Mandeb, leads to again the most important maritime transportation. So mean all goods, including oil, going to Europe, Asia, and even American market must pass the Somalian Sea. This makes Somalia a special country. Also, Somalia has untouched natural resources and oil. Also, the country has the longest coastline sea in the African continent. This is what Somalia makes important, and many countries already understand that importance. Turkey is one of the countries who understand the importance of Somalia and already invested billions of dollars, and the investment is already paying off. For example, Turkey in just 9 years become the fifth biggest of imports in Turkey, from $7 million to $150 million for bilateral trade in just 9 years.
Yeah, we will go this question. I mean, Turkey and Somalia. But before this thing, I want to ask to Mr. Mohammed Salah about the state building process of Somalia, because as we know, Somalia they have a very long experiences after their independence. They experienced to build a state from so many areas. So as I know, you were working on this stuff, state building of Somalia, and how Somalian faces and how we can say problem the solve this problem, this crisis. So how you see this? What's the process of state building in Somalia?
So thanks for having us again. So to just like kick off this issue, I think we need to go back a little bit in history, because Somalia got to this independence in maybe 1960, and then the country had a kind of like democratic process of 9 years, and then in 1969 a military coup dated actually occurred, and then some of military commanders actually took over the power, and then the military regime actually maybe fell in 1991. Since 1991 the country actually, I don't know, they were in crisis. You can call it civil war. Some people they call it maybe whatever you call it. And then like in 2000, in that period, since the military regime actually collapsed, there were actually several and continuous efforts to establish the state in Somalia. And I think still that process is taking place. It's an ongoing process still, but it's kind of like maybe improving or showing some progress. Now Somalia actually is like we kind of recovering, and it's in good position actually to look forward and stabilize the country. The Al-Shabaab is losing a lot of huge territory. They kind of like losing. Maybe in 5 years and maybe 7 years they will be defeated completely. The country is institutional actually. It is kind of this. Somalia is trying to rebuild maybe this political system, institutional kind of again an establishment is taking place. So there is a lot of progress taking place now.
So, for example, like scholars or literature said that Somalia is trying to make a peace building. I mean, in what perspective actually they are doing this kind of peace building? Like, what do you think that there should be a specific area? I mean, institutional peace building or peace building for the foreign aid transaction or foreign aid investment?
I think the peace building comes from one area, because like the war that took place in 1991, since then there is a continuous war for Al-Shabaab again, and I think in order to further or maybe to take another level the state building process, we need some jobs needs to be done. For instance, a reconciliation, maybe an inclusive reconciliation that everyone includes, in order to have an inclusive and comprehensive state. I think peace building process needs actually it's an ongoing process. It's taking place now, but it needs to be
gradually.
Yeah,
I mean, this time. I just want to, Mr. Ibrahim, like, could you please tell us like the Somalian position in Horn of Africa and the strategic position? It shows, because if we see even the map, the Somalia is a place like the country with Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and also like Kenya. I mean, like it's a huge importance. Even also as Mr. Fatah said, like the for strategic point, like Strait of Bab el Mandeb, and also from the Middle East perspective, the whole area is really important. Like, how do you see this importance to build a Somalia for future? How Somalia can use this strategic option for them?
Of course, when you have such a privilege, like being placed in such a geostrategic place, sometimes can turn into a curse, sometimes it can turn into a blessing. Maybe in the years that followed independence, it became kind of a curse because of the competitions between the two blocks, the Soviet bloc and the capitalist bloc. But then things are changing now. We are trying to make sure that we have balanced relations with our neighbors, amicable relations with our neighbors. Because in the years that preceded 1991, we were fighting with our neighbors because of land and stuff. But then, right now, we are trying to make sure we don't have too much foreign intervention. We make sure we want to regain our dignity, and we need to do this through all mechanisms possible. Let's not remember, just to add on to what Mohammed pointed out about state building and the history of state building in Somalia, we have to remember that Somalia was the first democracy in Africa.
Yeah.
It was the first country in Africa to hand over power, where a president handed power democratically without a coup. And this is historical. And we still have a lot to teach the world. And but then, of course, for this to happen, you need to have reconciliation within the state, and we need to maintain to open our trade channels with our neighboring countries, and we balance our relationship with other superpowers, so that we do prioritize our own interest and ensure that we all progress together.
Based on this question of Mr. Ibrahim, I want to ask to Mr. Abdul Fattah. For example, what he said, the strategic position of Somalia gives like so much importance. So even also we see the recently, if we follow the current news and stuffs like with the Somalia, so many countries are really attracted with the Somalia, from Turkey to Arab Emirates, from Europe to West, from West to Asia. So how do you think actually, from what perspective actually those countries are attracted? Those countries sees that Somalia is a very important country.
This is a nice question, and I think this is, I need to link the understanding of soft power. Many places I have said that some people, they consider that soft power only developed countries they can have. But I think third world countries and even poor countries, they can have soft power, and this leads Somalia to have soft power. Why? The reason that Somalia is attracting Western power to invest, to come to Somalia, to have influence, it's such that tells you that Somalia has soft power, which is this is special place, this geographical place that Somalia located. So these countries, Somalia need to ensure that they have fair political policies, so that all international actors want to invest Somalia in terms of security, in terms of politicals, need to follow that very political policies. And I think at the end is the Somalia who benefits from all these competitions.
Okay, that's a really nice interpretation from this background. But again, like it shows what Mr. Ibrahim said, like security concern. So if we see like those countries come to Somalia, do you think there is really some security implications and security problem that Somalia will face, or now still Somalia is facing from those countries when they come to and invest in Somalia? I think Mr. Mohammed wants to add
I just want to comment on something. The question that you asked, I think it is like the question has two sides. So you say like, okay, why they are coming, why they are attracted. So we need that. Okay, it is the problem is also security, because of like there's a lot of threat from Somalia. We cannot deny that. We need also to point out that Al-Shabaab is inside of Somalia. Many countries, maybe they're concerned that, for instance, maybe the West, the US, the Europe, they're concerned that, okay, in order to defeat Al-Shabaab, maybe in order to defeat terrorists, we need also to invest in Somalia. How can we invest in Somalia? Okay, we need to reestablish the state. So one of them, the reason of that, also the reason is that maybe the geopolitical position that Somalia is located. So we just need also to look from that side,
Well, you want to add something like Mr. Ibrahim, like those stuff, the security implications?
The security implications happen in different parts of the world, especially in weak states which are trying to recover, and they find themselves, of course, in a geostrategic position. The same case happens with Yemen, for example. So you have a lot of countries who are interested in competing for power and influence, and this, of course, can come sometimes with its own consequences. But then, right now, I think the current administration is it's doing its best to make sure that the relations are balanced between all politically rival countries, and to make sure that their contribution within Somalia is positive and not bringing the chaos that is outside Somalia to inside Somalia. But of course, this is not an easy thing to do. Let's remember that in the process of state building in Somalia, after the civil war, we have settled on having a federal system. Now, the federal system sometimes still the constitution is still being debated on. It's still a provisional one. So there are some few areas where we don't know the power sharing or the power sharing between the central government of Somalia and the federal member states is not very clear, and maybe some of the foreign countries try to manipulate this one, to manipulate this and doing this, using this in a disadvantaged position. But then I think also there has been progress in terms of relations between the federal government of Somalia and the member states, so that we come up with a strong foreign policy that is controlled by the federal government, of course, in consultation with the member states, and with the strengthening of the Somali foreign policy. I think we'll be able to manage the negative impacts and the implications that come from the coming of foreigners in our country, or the dealing with foreign countries. Once we have a strong established foreign policy in agreement and in agreement with the federal member states, then we are going to handle other problems easier.
So, for example, in foreign policy explanation from the literature base, it said for small countries, or like not small countries, we can say, like who are attracted by other big states, it's really hard for them to make balance, because they are not sometimes the maker of foreign policy decisions. So if we argue on this fact, like, okay, how Somalia can balance between this kind of state, whatever it is superpower, whatever it is regional powers, like how do you see, like, or how do you, I think both of three, like, how do you argue these things, like how they can make balance then? It's powerful countries, big states.
I think it's the problem of most the conflict countries. Like many countries that are right now undergoing the conflict state building. So it's the problem they are facing actually, because of, like, they don't have enough revenue, maybe they don't have enough capabilities to establish their own state or to recover. So they need a foreign help, which means that most of powerful countries that are interested in. So those countries also, they are actually campaigning for their own interests. So if there is a clash between these interests and the interest of and what the country want. So it's really a big task. It's a challenging, and I think it needs a lot of maybe a caution and attention and wisely chosen. And I think right now it's kind of the current administration is it's handling well and trying maybe to do its best to balance the relationship. But it's a challenging for every post-conflict country actually.
If I say something, actually Somalia is already balancing the relationship between the international actors who want to invest in Somalia, considering the last GCC crisis, Somalia didn't support any side. That is sign that shows Somalia is playing their role towards
an independent foreign
policy. An independent for any state. So, but it have some local problems, because the country is trying to build its national institutions to decentralize the public institutions. While these institutions are being rebuilt, the country also needs to have foreign investment donors to consider the Somalis tasks that wanted to be done, so that Somalia can again stand by its position in Africa. So I think that Somalia already played an important role, showing the world that they can balance the international actors and superpowers who want to have influence in Somalia.
But position, I mean, like those steps is very clear, like this strategic position and security steps of Somalia and political development of Somalia. But the other things, like how Somalia will be benefited economically in one side, as their position in Africa, how they can influence, attract the other African countries to Somalia, and also the other thing. And on the other hand, like how Somalia will be benefited economically. What Somalia have and what Somalia can take from other countries.
I think we have one challenge that need to be understood very well. Because of security, no one is willing to invest in Somalia. So that means we need to focus on building national institutions and security, so that foreign investment can happen. But now we have unbalance in terms of export and import. And one is we have national security, so we can attract other investment, because as I said before, Somalia has untouched natural resources, including the oil. So we only have to do understand about the security, and no one not willing to take that risk.
But of course, at the same time, you have a nexus. You know, you cannot pursue, you cannot solve security problems if you don't have the finances. So yes. I think the Somali government is also trying to balance between the two. You know, achieving security and achieving economically, because the two are feeding into each other. We cannot continue depending on foreign aid. Yes. Yeah, so that's why we see the Somali government is accelerating the process of oil exploration, and I think in the next month we are going to have a meeting here in Istanbul, in Istanbul, of course, in the second capital of Turkey, and another one in America, to look and to see to discover the potential of oil exploration in Somalia. And this one, if it goes successfully, then Somalia will be having its own.
But it's already received alert that says if Somalia produce oil will lead to conflict. The Security Council yesterday just announced.
We cannot depend, now that we know that there's a potential of a conflict if we pursue this project. We need to take the necessary precautionary measures. We cannot continue depending on foreign aid. I think it's time. Maybe it's a very debatable question, because people sometimes people are questioning whether Somalia is ready to exploit its oil because of the security problems.
If I add something, actually every country to produce oil will lead to economic development, no question. But considering Somalia has a unique challenge, social and political challenge, and I need to recommend that before exploiting the oil or taking any task that Somalia want to produce or take some activities to exploit the oil, the central government to do a research to understand whether this will lead to conflict or not. And we need to also give into consideration other international institutions in the world, like the UN and Security Council, who already suggested that this time Somalia is not ready to invest or to produce or to exploit oils. So this is a recommendation, and Somalian government also need to take a national research. So based on that findings, the country can take measurement or responsibility.
No, I don't have an exact idea to Somalia government did the investigation or research on these stuffs, but of course we can hope like Somalia, they knows, I mean, as government of Somalia, they knows what they should to do for their economic development and to balance with their security and conflict. Whatever, like I want to ask one more question. Even also it's related, but we can say the Somalia, they are all of their things, I mean, especially the diaspora of Somalia in abroad. If we see the Somalian has minister in Canada, Somalia has a congressman lady like very famously in USA. So like how you see this kind of stuff, the Somalian citizens, they are doing really great work in a whole world. But at the meantime, we also see some stuff, some negative stuff, like from USA. They have said like the Somalian citizens are not welcome in USA. So how do you think that those kind of stuff, the Somali, in one hand, Somalia is doing really great work in not only their country but in abroad, in other countries. On the other hand, they are facing this kind of problem. How do you see those kind of stuff as a Somalian citizen?
Well, I think first of all, with regards to that some Somalis in the diaspora reaching to high positions in Western countries, this is just a glimpse of the potential of the Somali people they have. I mean, someone like Ahmed Hussein, Ilhan Omer, and not only in politics, we have other people achieving even in sports like Mo Farah and some other great businessmen and women. This is just a glimpse on the potential of what Somalis can do, given the opportunity and the space to develop. But then at the same time, the complaint that comes from Western countries is not from is not representing the people of those countries. It's representing far right. You know, there's an increase of the far right, ideology gaining ground, not only in Europe, also in the USA, where they've been winning elections in some parts of the city, and they have their own. The part of their own ideology is a staunch stand against migration, especially when it involves people of Muslim heritage, and it's of course it's an alarming situation. It has led to the increase of Islamophobia and also sometimes probably Somalophobia, because there are places where Somalis are majority and they have been specifically targeted, not only because they are Muslim but also because of their ethnicity. But then I think the citizens of those countries, and at the same time they do not forget their roots. I think progress will continue.
That was a word etymology right invented, like Somalophobia. That was a good terminology.
Anyway, like those things, it shows like I want to ask one more questions. We know we actually introduced to Somalia, if you remember the one Hollywood movie, Black Hawk Down, I think that's name, and
yes.
it shows the Somalia. That's what we already discussed: the civil war or crisis, conflict. But now we see like there is a lot of countries, especially Turkey. They have a huge investment in Somalia. They have even also not only socio and economic investment in relation to Somalia or cultural relations. They have also defense cooperation with Somalia, Turkish military base in Somalia, and it's very talk issue in the world politics. So how do you see the Turkey and Somalian relation based on this fact? If you want to add something, Mr. Abdel Fattah.
Yeah, right. Actually, Turkey recently shown a great deal of attention to increase in political, social security with Somalia. Especially, this started with when the current president of Turkey, Mr. Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, went to Somalia together with his families, a number of NGOs, civil society organizations, businessmen, and together with even media. Since the visit, Turkey has established good cooperation with Somalia. Turkey became the first country to open its diplomatic relations with Somalia. They appointed the first ambassadors to Somalia. So actually Turkey is interested in Somalia and already invested, while other countries, they said Somalia, there is no security, we cannot take the risk. But Turkey already make investment, and I said before, the investment is already paying off. And if you see the Somali people, they see Turkey that Turkey's presence in Somalia is improving their lives. The approach they are implementing, they are changing the lives of Somalis. And also Turkey doesn't have any colonial role like many other countries. So
colonial legacy.
Yeah, this makes Turkey to receive
to more welcome to
to
Somalia.
warm the hearts of Somalia. And actually, Turkey, when he comes to Somalia, he answered the key problems that need to be addressed, that Somalian people need to be solved. So that would make it the Turkish relations Somalia to be strong, for instance.
Even also one more thing I just want to add, Turkey is giving huge scholarship and so much scholarship. There are a lot of scholarship students in Turkey come from Somalia, even also normally who want to study in Turkey by their own self, and they choose Turkey rather than to go Europe or to go US. Like why? You have a background, you finished your graduation from Turkey, so how do you see the Turkish education system and why Somalians like to study in Turkey?
Actually, it's one of the opportunities that Turkey offered to Somali people, because of like, as you know, even you mentioned it and before, like Somalia is like received globally as a war zone. So most of the countries, they don't allow actually to Somalis maybe to travel to abroad in terms for education, for health, all of that. Turkey came to Somalia and benefited actually from that. Also benefited for the Somalis. It's like a both way winning situation. So they offer this the opportunity to Somali students who want to actually an education to come to Turkey and study Turkey universities, and that's what, and also it gives the opportunity to Turkey to integrate maybe Somalis further.
Of course, I'm going just to add some few comments on what my few colleagues have said. Turkey's policy, of course, in Africa in general has been shaped by its involvement in Somalia. It sees Somalia as the gateway to Africa, and the Turkish African and Turkish Somali relations in particular are based into what His Excellency Erdogan normally calls it win-win situation, and it's this way of approach that is actually making Turkey more welcome. Of course, we can talk of various soft power policy things that make Turkey very attractive, including sometimes we can say we share the religion and culture. We can say we've had cooperation historically, especially during the war between the Adal Sultanate and the Ethiopian Christian kingdoms, where the Portuguese were fighting in the line of the Christian kingdoms, and the Ottoman Empire was fighting alongside the Adal Sultanate. But then currently we are talking about the relationships have advanced. We have strengthening of military cooperation, and this is very important for Somalia because the graduates the graduates from that military academy that is built in Mogadishu have already been deployed on ground, and in addition we have diplomatic cooperation, and not only has Turkey stood alongside Somalia in very difficult situations, Somalia has also paid back the good gesture. We remember in the 15 Ombes Temmuz coup, Somalia was the first country to denounce the coup, and it was the first country to expel the FETO staff within our country. We give them around 7 days, I believe. So this is a sign of the good brotherly relation between the two countries, and I don't think the two relationships are challenged. And Turkey is giving a model to the world on how two countries can cooperate,
more cooperation
mutually, with mutual benefits, with mutual interest, and achieve greater heights. And yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
I just want to add one more question on the Turkey and the Somalian relations. If I remember, you wrote one article. It stops like Turkish Somalian relation and scholarship stops. Could you please add one more thing, like what they are doing, like who are coming in Turkey and after graduation? What's their influence in Somalian society, Somalian policy making level, or Somalian development? Is there any actually good capacity building in Somalia who are graduated from Turkey or moved to Somalia?
Okay, nice. I think Somalia once has been the champions of African independence, African freedom, and African liberty. But currently, the country is in a critical time, difficult time. They say they're trying to build its national institutions, trying to enforce the rule of law. And I think the current students who are studying under Turkey scholarship program, which they are going the most and highly quality educations, public and private institutions in Turkey, in Ankara, in Istanbul, in Izmir, Konya. I believe these students will play an important role in helping Somalia to get back its position in Africa. What the position of Somalia was, the African freedom, the African liberty, the African civilization, is the Somalians, I believe, who are now studying in Turkey, other countries, to help Somalia get back to its position. And I am sure they will they will take that role. Those who graduate, they are now taking high important position in the government. They work here in Turkey. They work to make strong the cooperation between the two countries. So I believe Somalia has a bright future.
Well, by the way, there are one more question related to this. It shows that the Turkey and Somalia, they have a really huge, fantastic relations from every perspective, from security to economy to politics, politics to society, society to culture. But the fact is, like, it shows the Somalia and other countries, the bilateral relationship countries, like the European Union countries, Western countries, they have a good relations with Somalia. But the fact now we see the world is moving from West to Asian countries like China, India. So in one hand, we see Somalia has a very good relation with Turkey. On the other hand, China and India is moving to Africa. So how do you think, like, those kind of stuff, how Somalia can be benefited from those kind of stuffs in a side with Turkey?
I think as a country that is recovering, we are open to all countries that are interested in mutual, trade cooperations. So so far we have been involved in trade relations with the Chinese government. They have opened the embassy in Somalia, and alongside many other European countries, of course. And we had signed some agreements in terms of fisheries, in the fisheries industry. We also had some federal member states, for example, like Puntland had construction agreements, and I think Chinese companies are coming. So of course, I think as much as there is a win-win situation, as I told you, I mean, as much as a win-win situation, the Somali government, I'm hoping, and the Somali people are always welcome. There should be no reason of limiting the relationships, and I think it's a strategy of any country to widen its relationships. And I think Turkey has provided a good example to other countries.
Yeah, exactly. The last questions for everyone, if you say something like the future of Somalia, how do you want to see your country in future? For inside, domestic level, and also in outside, in international level. If you start to see, like, how do you want to see your country?
That's a tough question, but I would like to see my country like a peaceful, democratic, stable country that everyone has an opportunity, an inclusive society that helps each other, that can actually maybe create and initiate a great, bright future. That's where I want to see my country.
Mr. Ibrahim.
Oh yeah, the youth should be given the opportunity, and I think that they have the best opportunity right now. The current administration is a youthful administration compared to many other African administrations, and the youth have been contributing actively. Young people who graduated in Turkey, as Abdul Fattah has pointed out, are getting back to Somalia, getting employed. Some of them are becoming diplomats. Some of them are opening businesses to link
startup business
in the two countries. So the future is bright. I mean, there's always light in the end of the tunnel, and I think we are not very much into the tunnel. Actually, we are approaching to. We are about to see the light. We are almost seeing it. We want to just go into the fresh air soon, and a lot of expectations is on us as youth. Not me alone, not him alone. It's a collective responsibility, and I believe each one of us is ready to be deployed in his country and move to his country as soon as possible to share with his knowledge with and apply his experience in the country.
Mr. Farid?
Somalia now is raising, going forward, and in the future I want to see a stable, prosperous, democratic Somalia where every child born in Somalia feel happy,
Dignified.
feel dignified to live in the country. So I wish to see Somalia bright future. I was born when we lost the central government. I wish to see before I die a strong, stable, prosperous Somalia.
But before you die, very soon. You might die at 90. You know.
Okay, so it's really nice talking, and we understand it like Somalia is a really gate of Africa. They have a really great hope for future, and Somalians are working not only in their country, they have a great diaspora in the world, and whatever they are going, they have a really great potential, and they are doing this not only for their country but also for the world, for humanity, for world people. So that's the really great things that we understand and learn from Somalia. And thank you,
thank you for
having us and for coming this program. And dear viewers, thank you so much to watch our the third episode on Somalia, and welcome to watch our next episode in Natural Civilization at Natural TV.